How does a nation go from being a total backwater to the most powerful country in the world? Well, the story of the United States is just packed with unexpected twists, some seriously lucky breaks, and yeah, some pretty brutal conflicts. Okay, let's dive right in.
So you have to remember, for more than 100 years after Columbus bumped into the Americas, North America was basically ignored by all the big European powers. Seriously, they just didn't see anything there worth bothering with, especially compared to the other riches up for grabs.
And that's the big question, isn't it? How did this useless land completely transform itself into a global superpower? The answer? Well, it's a fascinating and totally unpredictable chain of events.
To really get America's story, you first have to understand why nobody wanted it for so long. And it all comes down to what those first European explorers were actually looking for.
See, Columbus was trying to find a shortcut to Asia, but when he landed in the Caribbean, his report back to Spain was all about one thing: gold. And that immediately set the agenda for Spain. They went straight for the gold and silver, which was all in Central and South America. North America, they sent one group up, they found nothing, and they basically just forgot about it.
So with Spain hunting for treasure down south, this huge, empty part of North America was left for France. Meanwhile, England, well, they were late to the party and basically just grabbed the only land left, which was the Atlantic coast. And this kind of random carving up of the map put two major rivals, Britain and France, right next to each other, setting the stage for a massive showdown.
By 1754, it was time. A war was going to decide who got control of the continent. And just look at these numbers. The British colonies had over 1 million people. New France, only about 60,000. I mean, that is a massive mismatch, and it was going to be absolutely decisive.
So, Britain wins the war and they now control North America. But here's the ironic twist. That huge victory actually planted the seeds for their own downfall. It kicked off a chain reaction that would end up creating a whole new country. After the war, Britain was in a whole lot of debt. And their logic was pretty simple. Hey, we fought this war to protect you guys, so you should help pay for it. They started slapping on new taxes, and the colonists, well, they were outraged. This is where we get that famous line, no taxation without representation.
But you know, declaring independence in 1776, that was just the beginning. It was a messy, really difficult process. It took another 5 years just to win the war, and even then, their first shot at a government was a total disaster. The real takeaway here is that it wasn't until the Constitution was finally sorted out in 1789 that the United States actually became a real functional nation.
Okay, so the country is up and running. Now comes the next chapter, growth. And what's so amazing is that a lot of this expansion wasn't some grand plan. It was more like a series of historic accidents and some really shrewd last-minute deals.
So let's jump over to Europe for a second. There's this guy, Napoleon, and he's trying to conquer pretty much everything. He had these big dreams for a French empire in North America, but he desperately needed cash, like right now, to keep his war against Great Britain going.
The United States sent a couple of guys over to France. Their mission? Just try to buy the city of New Orleans so they could secure their trade routes. But Napoleon, being short on cash, hits them with this unbelievable counteroffer. Forget New Orleans. How about the entire Louisiana territory for just $15 million? And this moment right here just perfectly shows you how unpredictable this whole story is. I mean, with one signature on a piece of paper, the United States literally doubled in size. Overnight. It was one of the greatest land deals in history, and it had almost nothing to do with American strategy. It was all because of a war happening thousands of miles away. And that purchase kicked off 50 years of non-stop growth. It was all fueled by this idea called manifest destiny, this belief that the nation was just destined to stretch from one coast to the other. So the U.S. bought Florida, they annexed Texas, and then after a really ugly war with Mexico, they took the entire Southwest. But while the country was getting bigger and bigger on the outside, a deep, dangerous crack was forming on the inside. The nation that had just been built was about to be put to the ultimate test.
The issue, of course, was slavery. In the industrial North, more and more people saw it as a terrible moral evil. But in the agricultural South, their entire economy was built on it. I mean, these were two completely opposite worldviews trying to exist in the same country. It just wasn't going to work.
For the southern states, when Lincoln won the election on an anti-slavery platform, that was it. That was the final straw. They truly believed their entire way of life was about to be destroyed, so they decided to leave the Union, form their own country, and that's what triggered the American Civil War.
After 4 years of the bloodiest war in American history, the North's victory came at an unbelievable cost. But it did settle two massive questions. Slavery was finally abolished, and the nation could not be divided. The United States was finally, and very forcefully, hammered into a single united country.
All right, so now the country is finally one piece, and it's powered by this huge industrial boom after the war. So America starts to look beyond its own borders and begins to flex its new power on the world stage.
And a change happened fast. First, they bought Alaska from Russia. Then came the really pivotal moment, the Spanish-American War in 1898. That war basically ended the Spanish Empire and created an American one. The U.S. got territories from the Caribbean all the way to the Pacific, places like Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Hawaii. An American empire, for better or worse, was born.
And nothing, I mean nothing, symbolized this new muscular American attitude more than the Panama Canal. America needed a shortcut between the Atlantic and the Pacific, so when Colombia said no to their offer to build one, President Teddy Roosevelt just backed an independence movement in Panama and then cut a deal with the brand new country. Simple as that.
So think about it. By the time World War I breaks out in Europe, the journey is basically complete. The place that was once considered useless land was now a giant that spanned a continent, with a massive two-ocean navy connected by its very own canal. It was, without a doubt, a real world power.
Which brings us all the way back to our big question. Looking at this incredible 400-year story, was America's rise to a global superpower some kind of inevitable destiny? Or was it just a remarkable series of lucky chances, opportunism, and conflict? The answer, it seems, is a really complicated mix of both.